These are 8 mistakes I still see people teaching today. I still see real estate agents using some of these things that I think is causing them to struggle more than they need to. And so these are the 8 cold calling mistakes that are simply outdated that you should stop doing immediately. The last one on my list, I think, will shock you a bit. So let's jump into this.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Caruth here. Listen, today I'm going to have a little fun. I want to react and give my commentary on Brandon's video here about 8 outdated cold calling strategies. If you don't know Brandon, he's a leader in the industry. He has a coaching program, reverse selling, that's helped so many agents. So he's a friend of mine, and I think this will be a lot of fun. So let's dive right in.
This right away. Number 1 is cold calling. Now, here's what I mean by this. You might say, well, what do you mean? Should I stop cold calling? Not necessarily. What I mean by the advice to cold call is what's being suggested that a real estate agent like you or I go into some cold neighborhood, pick up the phone and start calling random people. You know, they might call this circle prospecting. Well, there's a better way to direct outbound prospecting. And what I recommend that has served me and served the agents that I coach so much better than just calling random homeowners, hoping and praying that you find one that potentially is looking to sell a house. Why not? The definition of prospecting is to proactively initiate conversation with a targeted list of people. I mean, that's the definition of it.
So actually, the definition of circle prospecting is targeting the exact property owners that you want to do business with. So I think, with all due respect, that Brandon has the definition of circle prospecting completely wrong. It's actually not calling random property owners. It's actually calling the exact property owner that you want to do business with. Furthermore, I'm never going to tell anybody, just from my standpoint, me coaching real estate agents, I'm never going to tell an agent not to do something or that this is something you should not do. Because what I've found is that everything works. Every single thing out there in terms of lead gen and follow-up and systems, they all work. It just depends on what works well for you. What works well for this agent doesn't work well for that agent. For example, I've sold over 1,000 properties myself as a single agent, circle prospecting, the one thing he's saying here that agents shouldn't be doing. It worked well for me. Does it work well for every agent? No, of course not. I've got agents in my program that crush it on YouTube and Facebook and Zillow leads and expireds and for sale by owners and door knocking and sphere of influence and open houses and networking events, direct mail, everything. I have agents that do everything. So my program is not about do this lead gen activity. My program is about pick the lead gen activity that works best for you. Let me teach you how to communicate and articulate who you are as a person, that you care about people, to your prospects. I think the mainstream coaching and training has really put kind of a bad twist on agents, because they really teach agents the opposite of what they should be, in my opinion, right? And again, everything works. If you want to go out there and do the old school, how to get a deal done today kind of mentality, and it works for you, great, go do it. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. I'm just going to say what works for me is that when I approach a prospect, I'm trying to articulate who I am, that I'm here to help. I want to figure out what it is they want to do and why, so that I can help them do it. Let's keep going.
Instead of just calling random people, I think that's pretty outdated. Why not get a targeted list, a targeted niche, a targeted demographic of people that we know already have an interest in selling their home? Wouldn't that make more sense? Like, I mean, if you're going to spend an hour or two calling people, you have option A, call random people. You have no idea if they're ever going to look to move. Well,
who calls random people? Like, who calls random people? I don't know anybody that calls random people.
Oh, that's one option. The other option, option B, is to spend the same time only calling people that you already know want to move.
I don't know anyone that grabs a list of people that they know 100% for a fact is ready to sell their house. I know zero. I've heard of zero lead gen avenues that lead to that. Maybe I'm missing something.
Wouldn't that make a lot more sense? And so instead of just cold calling people, let's use direct outbound phone prospecting.
Instead of cold calling, let's just use outbound phone prospecting. It's like the definition of cold calling.
With people that we already know, the likelihood of them having a need for what it is that we do as real estate agents already be.
So, calling people that have the need for what we do as real estate agent, isn't that every single property owner in your market, right? Like for me, I'm trying to build a career here, right? And I also want to crush this year, next year, and I want my income to stair step as it has for over a decade now, as a real estate agent. And so, aren't property owners exactly who need our services? How many times in a property owner, somebody that already owns a house, from that point, how many times, how many transactions on average are they going to do in their life, right? And how quickly? What's the turnover ratio of these subdivisions, right? How often do the houses turn over? The owner, upgrades or downgrades or moves to another state and sells the house. What are those numbers, right? They're astronomical, number one. And I know every relationship that I put in place is worth 10 to 20 deals to me over the life of my career, not to mention all the deals I'm going to get today because of it. And so, isn't picking the exact property owner that you want to do business with and calling them about using your real estate services, isn't that what we're talking about here? I believe it is.
In existence, because our job is not to convince people to sell their house. Our job is to get in front of people that have already decided to sell their house. Number two on the
100% true. Our job is not to convince somebody to sell a house. 100%. When I'm talking to a property owner, I agree 100% with Brandon here. I do not care if they want to buy or sell or not. I want to know how they're doing. I want to know if, in fact, there's anything in the world that I can do to help them. And if not now, is it okay if I stay in touch forever so that I can do business with you in the future? Because I want to help you whenever you decide that you want to do something. So absolutely, we're not here to try to convince. We're here to help people who are ready to buy and sell real estate, A, and B, stay in touch with everybody, whether they're ready to buy or sell today or not.
list, being overly enthusiastic. There is just so many people make this mistake. And quite frankly, I made this for a long time. Calling a prospect and, the prospect picks up the phone. Hey, Bob, this is Brandon from Billy Bob's Real Estate. How's it going today? And so overly enthusiastic. The reason why that hurts you, it raises sales resistance or psychological reactance immediately.
Now, I agree 100% with this as well. If somebody is overly enthusiastic, completely over the moon enthusiastic, absolutely. That's going to throw some red flags. And that's what you see a lot of new agents or people that are new to prospecting, or even when they're having inbound leads like from Zillow, Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And they call the leads. They're just kind of like they're just fake. It just sounds fake, honestly. And so I actually agree with this. I think that the way that I've done it, and you guys can watch me make live calls. I made live calls. I called expireds this week. I'll call another lead source next week. I'll call every week that I'm not on the road traveling and speaking. I'll make live calls, and you can see the tone that I have with my prospects when I'm calling them. And then the level of enthusiasm. Should you be a little enthusiastic? Yes. Overly enthusiastic? Absolutely not.
Immediately, because the only people that talk like that with that overly enthusiastic tonality without having a relationship has to be a telemarketer, because they think if I can be overly enthusiastic.
Wait a minute. It's okay to be that enthusiastic if you have a relationship with somebody. Like, I would think that being overly enthusiastic like that is fake, no matter if you have a relationship or not. What does having a relationship have to do with if you can be overly enthusiastic or not? I didn't really quite get that part.
and have this whole big positive attitude that somehow it's going to get the prospect to be
Certainly don't have a positive attitude. Don't have a big positive attitude, whatever you do.
nicer to me. Well, it does the exact opposite. It's a dead nuts giveaway that you are a telemarketer
Dead nuts.
and you've got something to sell, and I regret picking up the phone, and how do I get out of this phone call as soon as I possibly can? That's what it actually does. So what we have to do is be more curious. What we have to do is be calm. What we have to do is mirror and match the tonality and the pace to which the prospect is communicating, and that is how you're going to have more better conversation.
I agree. Cool, calm, collected, like it's your mom or dad, brother, cousin that you're talking to. That's the way that you need to be. Right there. Calm, cool, collected, like this is your mom, dad, brother, cousin, best friend from high school, long lost friend. That's how you need to be when you call. I absolutely agree with that.
Conversations. Number 3 is saying, how are you today? Okay. Again, this is another thing that I see a lot of people making outbound calls doing that is a massive, massive mistake.
Now, I seen Brandon's post on this. And he said there was a Harvard study that, cold callers should not say, how are you doing? And all this stuff. And within the post, he actually says that the prospect knows that you don't care how they're doing. And see, I have a big problem with that because this is literally why I'm calling. The objective to me when I'm calling is to figure out how they're doing. I really genuinely want to know. It's really all I want to know, because once I know how they're doing, then I know exactly how to take the conversation to figure out what it is I can do to help them buying or selling real estate, either now or in the future. And I can really create some common ground there. And honestly, like I've made 100,000 calls, 100,000 cold calls. I've sold 1,000 properties, circle prospecting. And I can tell you that the calls, in the first half of that 100, I was very just driven to try to get to the point of the call, about whatever the real estate stuff was that I was talking about. And people just didn't respond well to that. But when I came at them with something that wasn't like every other real estate agent, just trying to get a listing, trying to set an appointment, trying to handle objections and get to the deal and all that stuff, when they realized I was somebody different who actually cared about how they're doing, what's going on with them, what I can do to help them, not what they can do to help me. See, most mainstream coaching and training is geared towards really articulating from the agent to the prospect, hey, Mr. Prospect, you don't know me, I don't know you, but will you sell your house so I can make some money? That's how most mainstream training and coaching molds agent into sounding, that they're just worried about what the prospect can do for them. When that's not even who the agent is. These agents work so hard. They got in the business for the right reasons to help people. They listen to their broker, they listen to their coach, right? And then they go out there and follow the directions exactly the way that broker, trainer, coach told them to do it. And they don't sell anything. They wonder why. Well, it's because they sound like every other agent just trying to do a deal. Why not take just a second to actually see how someone's doing today and not treat them like another number or just a human? But on the flip side, when you're asking someone how they're doing, absolutely. If you don't care how they're doing, if you have zero interest in them and what's going on with them today, then you are going to come across disingenuine. It is going to come across fake, and it is going to throw red flags because they're going to hear it in your voice that you really don't care how they're doing. But if you actually do care how they're doing, then that's going to come out, and they're going to be much more receptive to that. You guys can watch me make live calls all day, and you'll see exactly, how I go about this. But I feel like this is interesting how strong and how firm Brandon holds on this don't say how are you doing thing. Like you have to have a relationship, like a long going, like how long do you have to know somebody before before you're allowed to ask them how they're doing? I mean, for me, it's like we all live in the same town. What's the chances that someone lives in the same area of you in terms of not only just a percentage of population around the earth, but also during this same time, right? It's like almost nothing that this person lives in the same area as you live and during the same time. You're so connected just because of that. It's not even funny. We should think of ourselves as volunteer workers doing community outreach to see how many people we can help buy and sell real estate. And the only way to do that is by reaching out, seeing how people are doing, see what's going on with them, what they want to do, what their goals are, how they want to do it, when they want to do it, so that we can help them do it. So I'm kind of getting on my soapbox here about this. Let's continue here. But this is interesting.
Because again, without having the true rapport with a prospect over the phone, to ask a question like that comes across maybe disingenuous. And so, I mean, the only people that do that are people that they have relationships with, which you do not. And so it comes across as you not being authentic. A fake, how are you doing today, in hopes that you're going to break into a conversation, is the opposite of a pattern interrupt.
I absolutely agree. A fake, how are you doing? A fake, how are you doing, will absolutely, as I said, draw red flags. A genuine, how are you doing, will actually create the opposite and build instant rapport with your prospects.
There's a better way to open up that phone call in a way that will build real rapport. And real rapport allows you to earn respect that will allow you to have a better conversation with the prospect when you call them out of the blue. Number 4.
So what I'm gathering here on some of this, like earlier, he said, let's call targeted leads who are ready to sell right now. But he didn't tell us how to get that. He didn't tell us where those magical leads are. Now he's saying there's a much better way to open up a call, to build instant rapport, much better. But he didn't tell us that magical line. We're just going right into the next thing. So it seems like he's saying don't do these things, but then he's leaving all this stuff out. He's leaving the punchline out of this stuff.
Hitting start on your dialer at 8 a.m. Now, you might say, well, what do you mean? Are you saying not to start prospecting first thing in the morning at 8 a.m.? No, I'm not. But here's what I am saying. If you think about this, this is a big mistake. Let's just say you're using a lead source like a Red X or like a Vulcan 7 or a Mojo, just as an example. Well, number one, isn't it fair to say that so is all of your competitors? That's number one. Number two, isn't it also fair that they are getting the same list of prospects that you're getting? So if there's two agents in the same market and they're both on, let's just call it Vulcan 7, and they're both getting their expired listing leads from Vulcan 7, they're both getting the same list. And if they both hit start at the same time in the same list, they'll be calling the same prospects at the same time. Now multiply that by 100 or 1,000 of agents in your market doing the exact same thing. How effective is everybody calling the same prospect at the same time, using the same system, using the same number? It's not very effective.
I mean, that would be like lightning striking the same person a million times. He's saying 1,000 agents calling the exact same person at the exact same time. And also, it's like, okay, you're talking about expired specifically. And number one, I go back 10 years worth of expireds. I've got two agents right now that both have over 25 active listings, and both of them tell me the sweet spot is 2-year-old expireds. So that's a quick tip just for the current market right now. But like for me, like I called expireds, Tuesday, and like I've just got to just with Red X or Mojo or any of these, like it just piles up the expireds. I don't think everybody's calling the expireds every day. Anybody that makes a lot of calls, by the way, you'll get to a point where you can't make any more calls because you're so busy from all the calls that you made. You built such a big database. You've got so much going on. You barely have time to make calls. I see it all the time. I got agents right now discouraged because their business is so big. They're making $500,000 a year and they can't make calls because they're so busy closing deals. And it's scaring them because they know that calls has got what got them where they are, and they don't want to lose what they got. And so they're scared because they're not making calls. But it's a good problem to have. But my point is that for everyone to be calling the same people at the exact same time. Now, there are agents that especially newer agents that aren't selling a whole lot yet. They have a lot of time on their hands that are calling the same leads. So let's talk about that for just a second. So you got the scenario that chances are pretty low, but out of a big market, you probably got some agents that are pounding the very new expireds. Um, I mean, as far as that scenario goes, I'm not really going to go after brand new expireds, that day early in the morning. I like older expireds. I like week old expireds, month old, 6 months, 2 years, a year. I like all those expireds, honestly. But the new ones, when I call the new ones and they're getting pounded by agents, I mean, I just kind of try to talk them off the ledge for just a second, because the fact is that they haven't talked to me yet. And every agent has a unique value proposition within their personalities. They're going to connect with people totally different. So I don't think it's a problem that if agents are calling the same leads, is that something that is ideal? No, that's why I call older expireds and stuff like that. But this is very interesting.
So, what should you do instead? Well, what I coach to and what I have done in my own sales practice is kind of go sniper mode. So, I'm getting the data from Vulcan 7, but what I'm doing, if I'm going to call leads like a for sale by owner or an expired listing that have high urgency, you got to call them immediately, right? Instead of just hitting start, because the way the data came through Vulcan 7 is organized in a way that everybody gets the same data organized the same way. So, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to sort through the data prior to my prospecting session, and I'm going to go reach out. I'm going to call the ones that to me have the highest likelihood of conversion for me. So that might be a specific neighborhood, a specific price point. There's other factors that go into that too. And so if I'm getting 15 expired listings in that day, instead of calling the first one like everybody else is doing, I might hand dial some ones that are further down the list that I think have a higher likelihood to convert. And I will be able to be that first voice while everybody's hitting start on the dialer going after the same list. I'll be ahead of the game. Hopefully that makes sense. Number 5.
Yeah, it does make sense. That's exactly what I did Tuesday. I filtered through, I hand dialed. I picked the ones that were condos and, in my area, because that's the whole county, of course. But I think something that's probably, I don't know if you guys missed it when I said it a while ago, but these expireds, you don't have to call them right then. I think Brandon just said if it's a for sale by owner, if it's an expired, you got to call them right then. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily 100% accurate. Like, a lot of my agents call month-old expires. Like I said, 2-year-old expires has been our sweet spot. And I like to call them, a week, within the last 30 days, stuff like that is kind of my favorite. Expireds are actually my favorite types of leads to call, because I can get a story out of expireds really quickly. When I say, hey, number one, my script, like Mr. Johnson, cool. Hey, Mr. Johnson, Ricky Cruth, whatever real estate company, whatever area, how are you doing today? Yeah, me too. I'm enjoying the day. Isn't it gorgeous? Listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I see you were trying to sell this house. It's not on the market now. Like, what's the story? What happened there? What's going on? And then boom, they tell me a story. They tell me what's going on. And that's something that's hard to get out of different kind of prospects. I don't necessarily hear like this incredible story about the property that they were just trying to sell. It's just a very unique situation, and it's really cool. Another thing I want to note is that when I'm calling expireds, I am not trying to list that property. I'm using that property as an excuse to get into a conversation to see if I can get to know this person for a second, find out what it is they're truly trying to do and why, and then help them do it. I've had so many expireds that I represented as buyers, right? They wanted to buy stuff. And I wasn't focused on that house. I was focused on that person, trying to figure out what it is they want to do, and come to find out they wanted to buy something. And so I represented a lot of expireds as buyers, and then went on to actually sell the property that expired, maybe a year or two later. I've done that several times. So when you're doing this and you're prospecting, like, understand my point of view, my strategy is not to necessarily list the property, but more so use the property. If it's circle prospecting, if it's a internet lead, for sale by owner, expired, whatever it is, I'm using the property as an excuse to get into a conversation to see if I can get to know this person a little bit, make a connection, so that I could create this lifelong relationship to help them now, later, whatever. That's the way that I play these type of leads.
forcing the conversation without permission. So this is what I was saying before. When you get into a conversation or when you make an outbound prospecting phone call and the prospect answers and it's Bob and you say, Bob, how's it going today? Bob, I mean, let's be real. I mean, you think Bob is sitting around waiting to talk to a real estate agent and just sitting by the phone? I don't think so. And so what we have to do is we have to actually have a pattern interrupt in order to pique the prospect's curiosity, to pique the prospect's interest, to earn the right to have the conversation. Otherwise, I'm sure you're experiencing it right now. Prospects just say, I'm not interested. Take me off your list. Click. I bet you that happens a lot to you watching this video. So what do we do to make sure that that stops happening? Well, if we get the prospect's permission to have the conversation up front, the likelihood to have a better conversation increases dramatically. And the way in which we do this is by lowering reactance. And we've talked about that a lot on the channel. But reactance is when somebody feels as though their ability to make their own decisions are being taken away. And when that happens to somebody pushes back, says, no, I don't even care. When they feel that pressure, they push back. So what we have to do is lower, or in other words, remove the psychological reactance. How we do that is by giving up the perception of control and giving it to the prospect. So the prospect feels as though they're making their own decision. The best way to do this is by approaching the conversation like this. You say, Mr. Prospect, listen, this is Brandon. I'm a realtor. And before you hang up, I was just hoping to tell you why I called really quick. And then you can decide if we need to have this conversation or not. Would that?
I don't know that I like this. You're basically assuming that they don't want to talk to you. You're basically assuming that they want to hang up, even though they answered the phone and are giving you an opportunity to speak. I don't know. Again, like, if this works for you, awesome. That's great. Use this. If this is what makes you comfortable. I've always said, like, whatever you have to do to make yourself feel comfortable enough to make these calls, do it. Absolutely. But just myself personally walking into it and really quickly saying, listen, don't hang up, or no, you might want to hang up, but, give me an opportunity here. I think it sounds like we're kind of desperate, is what it sounds like to me.
That be fair? And when you do that, the prospect isn't used to having this new sense of control on a conversation. And so they don't even know that this is happening. They're not calculating this thought. It's just a natural psychological response where they say, well, sure. It's like asking somebody the question, can I ask you a question? And what do they say every single time? They say yes. It's a universal yes. And so when you approach the conversation this way, you're going to find that the conversations go longer, that you're able to ask more questions, that they engage.
So I do this at the end of the call when I'm asking to stay in touch, right? So at the end of the call, when they say they're not interested, like he was just saying, if they're saying they're not interested and they hang up or whatever, number one, like, I'm like, whoa, like, just so you know, I'm not trying to sell your house today. We go into why I'm calling to see if there's something I could do to help you based on a recent sale, a recent listing, whatever it is, right? And when they say they're not interested, I'm like, great. So you got to hit the transitions, guys. There's transitions in a phone call. Right. When you get to the points where it's the inflection point of the call and the conversation, you can keep it going with these transitions. So, like, there's many before we get to this point. But when we get to this point, they say they're not interested. Like, great. Listen, is there an agent that you would work with if you were to buy or sell? Right. No. Cool. Well, listen, I'm sure at some point in the future, you're going to buy or sell, I would imagine, right? Even if it's 5 or 10 years down the road. Correct. Cool. Listen, I would love the opportunity to work with you when that day comes. Would it be all right if I stayed in touch with you? Yes? Great. What's a good email for you? Is this your cell number? Again, my name is. I'm going to stay in touch with you via email. Let me know if there's anything I can ever do for you. Tell everybody I said hello, and we'll talk to you soon. So when I ask them for their email, I'm actually asking for permission to stay in touch before I actually ask for their email. Of course, they're going to say yes. We made it this far in the conversation. It's a good conversation. They're feeling a little more comfortable with me. And I'm like, is it okay if I stay in touch? Yes. Great. Then I ask for the email. So I do the same thing. I just do it later into the conversation.
more. And so, because not only did you lower reactance, but the other benefit of opening a call like this is you get to benefit the principle of consistency. This is another thing that psychologists have found to be very useful is when someone verbalizes a commitment, they behave to stay consistent with that decision. Next, number 6, trying to get an email from everyone you talk to. This is a massive mistake. Why? Because what I see happening is real estate salespeople trying to force every single prospect that they talk to in their database. And what ends up happening is they grow this huge email list of prospects when their real intention was to generate leads. And they end up getting into the data collection business instead of the selling of real estate business.
And I think the bottom line here is that you can do both. You can have the data collection, and you can have the real estate business. That's what I am all about here is building your database to the point. And I agree with Brandon that real estate agents get really fixated on what they perceive to be the objective of the call. And so if you're, let's just say, mainstream coaching and training, the objective is to set the appointment. And so what I saw for so long was agents who would focus everything on getting the appointment. And they were like blinded. They weren't even trying to like hear about why the seller or buyer wants to buy or sell. If in fact this expired wants to buy a different property, they're so fixated on just listing that expired, listing that for sale by owner. There's nothing else. They're not going after anything else. They're just so focused on the appointment and listing that property. And so, I'm sure he's referencing my coaching program because that's one of our things is emails. And if you understand the depths of the psychology behind my scripts, it's not just a script on a piece of paper. There's a reason for every single word of my scripts. And if you really understand it to the fullest, you'll understand objection 1 is to see how they're doing today. Objection 2 is to make them feel comfortable with you. Objective number 3 is to see if there's anything we can do to help them buying and selling real estate today. Objective 4 is to collect their data to stay in touch forever. So if they're not buying or selling today, then we want to be able to remarket to these people forever. I don't see how that's a bad thing. But whatever the agents just lasering in and focusing just on that and really just blocking everything out and being blinded to any other kind of opportunities absolutely is a problem. But it's kind of the case with anything, with agents. They just get very laser focused because they're inexperienced and they haven't really got to the level of communication to be able to really read the other person on the phone and really try to figure out what's going on behind the scenes and read between the lines to really see what we can do to help these people. So I think it's true no matter what. If you say, you could say it's the email or you could say it's setting the appointment, whatever it is, the newer, prospecting agents are with their inexperience are going to be laser focused in on something. And yes, it's a problem. I would rather see the problem be a big database than to have a problem with a small database at the end of the day. At least you have something there. And by the way, the largest companies in the world pay billions and billions and billions of dollars for data. They build their businesses on data by remarketing to people through the data, through behaviors, so on and so forth. It's really the way that we should run our real estate businesses. We should be a data collection entity. Our business should be a big part of our business needs to be data collection. It's what all the other big companies do. It's what I did. It's how by 2017, I was making $1 million a year. I quit prospecting and I was able to make $1 million a year every year after that in real estate commissions with zero prospecting. Why? Because I had collected all the data over the years and I'm able to use that to remarket to continue making $1 million. So, I honestly, I don't know what Brandon's sales are or experience or anything, but I can only speak from my experience and my results. And that is millions and millions and millions of dollars. But this is very interesting. Let's keep it up.
And I don't know about you, but collecting email addresses doesn't pay very well. And so I understand the mindset.
And another thing that I wanted to point out, I watched one of Brandon's calls where he called a prospect. I'm not going to critique him on the call and the script and all that stuff, but He asked for the email address, which I find very interesting.
Mindset, but the problem is it's a scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset says, I'm going to try to get something out of every single conversation that I have versus how do I have a high quality conversation? Maybe I'm generating a lot less leads over the phone, but the leads I do generate actually convert into listing appointments and then into listing because the agent that's trying to convert everybody ends up working or generating information from people that are not looking to sell their house for years into the future.
Which is exactly, if they're not going to buy or sell anything today, okay, if they're going to buy or sell years in the future, don't you want to represent them in those years in the future? Do you want to throw that future business away? You're there anyway talking to them. You've already spent the time to dial them, to have the conversation, to talk to them. Wouldn't it be smart to just take not even more time? It takes the exact same amount of time to collect their information, stay in touch with them for the day that they do decide that they want to buy or sell. Don't you want that future business? Or, I mean, and my real question is like, is Brandon saying to throw away the future business and only deal with people who want to buy and sell today? I mean, this is literally how I got to the level of business that I had, was that time is going to go by regardless, and if I'm talking to this person anyway, wouldn't it be smart to collect the data to do future business with? I can't wrap my head around that one.
There's business to be had right now. So instead of trying to convert everybody, the thing that has served me that I coach to is why not you be skeptical of every prospect like they are of you? So what does this mean? This means asking good qualifying questions to determine, is this a lead or am I forcing this person to my database for some reason? Because collecting email addresses is not the business that we're in.
Again, if you're there anyway, and you're trying to find people that want to do business now, but somebody doesn't want to do something business now, and they own a property, the exact property you want to sell, wouldn't it be wise to stay in touch with them until the day they do? Furthermore, you know how many people that I've collected emails from who said they would sell, never sell, or maybe they sell in 3 to 5 years, and they call me in 30 days and say, come take a look at our house? You know how many times that has happened? You can't judge that that somebody that they say doesn't want to sell or whatever doesn't actually want to sell, right? If this is the first conversation you're having with them, chances are they may or may not tell you exactly what's on their mind for real, for real. But after a couple emails from you and they're like, wow, this is the real deal. I love the conversation I had with them. Let's call Ricky. Or maybe something happens 3 months down the road where things change. Things change all the time. People change their minds all the time. I want to collect every single person in my market's contact information and send emails to them. That's how I and many, many, many other agents have built massive, massive businesses, not only for the future, right? Through this process, I'm closing more deals than anybody else today, this year, right this second. By the way, man, we got $7 million worth of pending deals right now in little old Alabama right now as we speak.
Number 7, trying to close the sale over the phone. This is another mistake that I see a lot of people really struggle with. And that is, we call a prospect out of the blue. We have our first conversation and somehow we think that we can use a magic script to get them.
This music's got me hyped, bro. I got to tell you the truth. This is some tight, this is some good music.
To agree to list their house over the phone on the first call. Well, I mean, again, all that is doing is raising resistance. It is so unlikely for you to call a prospect.
Where'd the music go?
Completely random, out of the blue, convince them with some magic words that all of a sudden they're going to say, yeah, I'll list my house with you tonight. I mean, it's so unlikely. What's more likely is for them to say,
wait a minute. You said, let's go find people that want to sell their houses now. And now you're saying it's totally unlikely that they're going to say, hey, come take a look at my house to possibly see what it's worth.
Nope, not interested. I'm good. Nope. Just resist. And I know this because if you look at your conversions, if you're making 100 calls a day, not all 100 are saying, come list my house, are they? No, what we have to do is we have to break up the sales process into small, easy, micro commitments for the prospect. In other words, phone is designed to set appointments face to face. And that is how we position the conversation. You can't list a house without having first some type of listing appointment, whether that be over Zoom or in person face to face. So why not spend the time over the phone, focus on selling that interaction first? It's got to come first anyway. We can't skip over that anyway. So that is the approach. We use the phone to set appointments. We use the appointment to convert into listings. Number 8 on the list is the one that you've been waiting for. Using scripts to get people to say yes. Now you're like, Brandon, I don't get it. Isn't that the whole goal, is to get people to say yes to whatever it is that we're pitching over the phone? Well, not necessarily. So the way in which I see most scripts written and most scripts taught is by asking questions that hopefully will solicit the prospect's agreement with a yes. Now, the problem with that is, prospects don't owe us anything. And so over the phone, they have this, their defense is up. And so it is very difficult to get, unless you get really good and your skills grow, it's difficult for people to get prospects to be agreeable. What they aren't used to doing, and what I am suggesting that you do, is you don't do this with every question, but what we want to do is reframe the type of question that we're asking to get agreement by getting the prospect to say no. And so the reason why this is so effective is the way you can ask a question, instead of saying to the prospect, hey, are you still interested in selling your house? All right. It's a bad question. It is so easy for the prospect to not agree with that because they feel threatened. They feel like you're trying to sell them. A better way to ask that question to get agreement by getting them to say no would be something like this. Mr. Prospect, would you be totally against the idea of reviewing an offer if the numbers made sense? And them saying, well, no, I'm not totally against that.
That's good.
Is their way to agree to the question. So try to ask what we call no-oriented questions. And I think what you're going to find is that more and more prospects agree with you.
Yeah, well, I like that. That sounds real good.
So if you want help with any of this stuff, before you leave, I'm going to put a link underneath this video. And if you want to have a conversation about potentially working together, learning about our Listing Agent Academy coaching program so that we can help you build a multiple 6-figure listing agent business, click the link. You can schedule a day and time that works best for you. We can have a conversation, explore the idea of working together. And then at the end of that, we can both decide if working together at this time makes sense or not. So click the link beneath this video, and I'll see you guys in another video very soon.
The music hype. The music is hype. Oh man. No, that was good stuff, man. I really, really, really enjoyed this video, honestly. It's good to hear like opposing opinions on stuff, because why? Everything works. It was good for me to hear like an opposing side of a lot of my theories on prospecting and cold calling. It opens my mind up to the possibilities, and it stretches me, and it helps me, honestly. It helps me think about things differently. Being around people with different energy and different ideas is extremely healthy. It helps you become a better version of yourself, because if you're just stuck in your own world, if you're just stuck with your own theories and you're not bouncing these ideas off of anyone, if you're not, around different vibes and theories and ideas, it's hard for you to grow. So anyway, that's what this video is all about, is hearing a different angle, different side. You guys go subscribe to Brandon, check out his coaching program, all that good stuff. And let me know what I can do to help you on my end. I hope this video helped you a ton. I'm going to put another video right here for you to go and watch. I'll put a video right here of me making live calls. How about that? Video right here, me making live calls. So you can go watch that and let me know what you think. I'll be here making live calls next week. I'll be making live calls next week. So tune in for that. And we'll see you guys on the next video. Keep selling, keep building. Take care.
I-35 with the top down, quick to tell a hater they should get like me. Seem like everybody wanna be the boss, but it costs and these lames ain't like me. Drop a couple